Hey guys, real quick before the start of this video, I want to say thank you so much to both Adam and Decharak for donating to the channel. The, donations were both greatly appreciated. If you guys are ever interested in giving to the channel, it'll help out with getting new equipment and things along those lines. The link to it will be down in the description below. But anyway, guys, with that out of the way real quick, let's get into the topic of this video, which is talking about all of the quarterback options for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for the 2020 offseason. So guys, without further ado, let's talk about it. Now, I know people are going to watch this video after watching my most recent video where I talked about whether the Buccaneers are or are not going to sign quarterback Jameis Winston back to a new contract, and they're going to say, hey, James, we just saw your latest video. You said the Buccaneers are going to be bringing back quarterback Jameis Winston. Why are you making this video? Now, I have two reasons for making this video. Reason number one is that it is not 100% guaranteed that the Buccaneers are going to bring back Jameis Winston on a contract. Now, a lot of things could still happen, and the Buccaneers could replace Jameis Winston. That is a thing that could still happen. And I've seen a lot of people suggest a lot of different names out there, which I will be addressing in this video. So I felt that it was a pretty good idea to make this video just to cover all of the Buccaneers' options should they decide to move on from Jameis Winston. The second reason I'm making this video is because, quite frankly, if the Buccaneers do decide to bring back quarterback Jameis Winston, they need a very strong backup plan in place. Now, I've seen a lot of people list a lot of different, solid backup plans for Jameis Winston should he start to struggle and need to be benched. And we even saw the Tennessee Titans do this with Marcus Mariota and Ryan Tannehill. So I felt that it was also important to throw these guys' names out there because one of them could be brought in as a backup quarterback, to eventually replace Jameis Winston should he start to struggle. So there's a couple of, reasons for making this video. So let's get into the options. The first guy I want to talk about is actually the only quarterback currently under contract, I guess I should say, with the team. It is quarterback Ryan Griffin. Now, guys, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't have a lot of faith in Ryan Griffin to do anything significant for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback position next season. I'm sorry, Griffin Greatness on Instagram. I truly am sorry. But I think just given the circumstances here, the coaching staff not really giving Ryan Griffin any type of, break, I guess you could say, in terms of being the backup quarterback or even, replacing Jameis Winston at all last year. I just don't think it's ever going to happen. Ryan Griffin, he's been a career third-string quarterback, and he only was a backup this last season because Blaine Gabbert got hurt. Bruce Arians definitely preferred Blaine Gabbert over Ryan Griffin in terms of backup quarterback. There's no doubt about that in my mind. So yeah, just to make it short here, Ryan Griffin, I know there's a lot of, people in the Buccaneers fan base who want to see Ryan Griffin finally get his shot at starting quarterback, but he's 30 years old now at this point. We've only seen him for a drive and a half in just his entire career in terms of regular season play. I don't think he's going to do anything significant for the Buccaneers in 2020. Next is two Buccaneers quarterbacks who, are out of their contracts right now but could always get re-signed. It is Jameis Winston and Blaine Gabbert. Now, I've already talked about Jameis Winston. Go check out my most latest video if you want to see some talking points about him. But Blaine Gabbert, people are going to get mad at me. I don't mind Blaine Gabbert as a backup quarterback. Now, can Blaine Gabbert be a starting quarterback for you for an entire season? I'm not too comfortable with that, but I would like to say from Bruce's perspective, he does trust Blaine Gabbert a lot. Back whenever he signed Blaine Gabbert to a contract, he was very happy about the signing. He said that, he's won some games with Blaine Gabbert at quarterback. And whenever they asked him about the backup quarterback competition between himself and Ryan Griffin, Bruce Arians essentially said that, yep, it's Blaine Gabbert's job, sorry Ryan Griffin, to paraphrase there. And that definitely would have been the case if, Blaine Gabbert had not hurt his shoulder and got knocked out for the entire year. Another interesting thing that I want to point out is they asked Bruce Arians in one of his last press conferences of the year, why Jameis Winston had such a long leash on making mistakes. To paraphrase Bruce Arians' response here in this video, Bruce Arians essentially said that a big part of it was Blaine Gabbert getting hurt. So my crazy theory is that we definitely could have seen Blaine Gabbert playing some games had he not got hurt in the preseason. Jameis Winston could have potentially gotten benched if not for poor play, definitely for his bad thumb injury that he suffered later in the season, if Blaine Gabbert was there ready to play. So Bruce Arians certainly likes Blaine Gabbert enough to, play him in Arizona and potentially play him in Tampa Bay had he had not hurt his shoulder. So I would like to think that Bruce Arians would strongly consider bringing, Blaine Gabbert back to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And you know what? People are going to be mad at me, but I wouldn't mind seeing him compete for the backup quarterback job. Next is three guys I want to talk about who I don't think are going to be on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers radar at all. I think that they are just, not even going to be on the table. Those three guys are Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and Ryan Tannehill. In the case of guys like Drew Brees and Ryan Tannehill, they're not going anywhere. Drew Brees is going to retire with the Saints, and Ryan Tannehill has been on an insanely impressive run with the Tennessee Titans after he replaced Marcus Mariota. They're not going anywhere. The interesting one is Tom Brady. Now, I don't think Tom Brady is anywhere near close to picking the Tampa Bay Buccaneers should he decide to leave the New England Patriots, but if anything changes, I may even make a own personalized video talking about Tom Brady. But I think that right now, I think Tom Brady is either A, going to be going back to the New England Patriots, or B, he's going to go out to California, maybe do, San Diego to the Chargers or the Raiders, something along those lines. I really just don't think Tampa Bay would be on his radar. Moving on from those guys, I want to talk about some quarterbacks whose contracts have ran out, and they are going to end up being free agents unless they re-sign with their teams. Those quarterbacks are Marcus Mariota, Case Keenum, Teddy Bridgewater, Eli Manning, and Phillip Rivers. First off, Marcus Mariota, Case Keenum, those guys would probably be more backups. It would be really interesting if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota on the same team, but I just don't think that that would happen. Case Keenum, I wouldn't mind if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers brought in. I think he could be a very, very, very capable backup who could win you a handful of games. He had that absolutely magical run with the Vikings, and I think that, that was the peak of what his career could be, and I still think he could have a couple of years left of that level of play. He just kind of had a rough situation with the Washington Redskins. Then you have the really, really old vets, Phillip Rivers and Eli Manning, who Eli Manning is personally my dad's pick, who the Tampa Bay Buccaneers could look to bring in. So shout out to you, Dad. But for those two guys, it's really interesting. Those two guys, they're almost 40 years old right now. They've been around the league for a lot of years. Eli Manning's won 2 Super Bowls. Phillip Rivers has been to the playoffs multiple times. And, I think that Phillip Rivers would be the more interesting option than Eli Manning. But, I suppose either one I would be fine with, I guess. It would at least be interesting just to have those guys on our teams because they're essentially, mini legends in their own right. So, yeah, that would be a pretty interesting move. But they are getting a little bit up there in age. I wouldn't expect them to be with the Buccaneers past, say, 2, maybe even at most 3 years. Finally, the last guy to talk about here on this small portion of the list, Teddy Bridgewater, who is Gabby's personal pick to come in and do something for the Buccaneers at the quarterback position. So, Gabby, shout out to you. Teddy Bridgewater is so interesting. He had the horrific knee injury with Minnesota, then he went to the Jets, then he went to the Saints, and he's kind of revitalized his career with the New Orleans Saints. And he's only 27 years old. You could certainly still get a lot of starting quarterback play out of Teddy Bridgewater, and he is a former first-round draft pick. So out of all of the guys that I listed, Teddy Bridgewater is the most interesting one so far up to this point, and that's one that could be really enticing for Bruce Arians and company. Bruce Arians has said multiple times that he respects Teddy Bridgewater's game back when the Buccaneers played them this past season, and he really liked how Teddy Bridgewater conducts himself as a quarterback. So, could definitely be a possibility. The big question is going to be, is Teddy Bridgewater going to return to the Saints and just continue to wait to be Drew Brees, heir, essentially, to being the quarterback of that team? So we'll just have to wait and see. But Teddy Bridgewater, yeah, he's certainly a very, very interesting option. So we can get into some of the guys who could potentially be released from their contracts this offseason. I've only listed 3 who are worth mentioning. It is Cam Newton, Andy Dalton, and Joe Flacco. Let's talk about Cam Newton first. Guys, I don't think this one's going to happen. Cam Newton, he's an interesting guy. Okay, he is. He's very eccentric. He does a lot of interesting stuff with what he wears, how he acts, stuff along those lines. I just don't think he's a good fit for Tampa Bay. It's not just because he's, with the Carolina Panthers, a division rival. Just from what I remember Bruce Arians saying about him, his mind not being in it as much anymore. He's certainly very beaten up. He isn't the same Cam Newton. Essentially, just to paraphrase here, that's not an exact quote of what Bruce Arians said. It doesn't seem like Bruce Arians thinks very highly of Cam Newton right now. It certainly feels feels like. All of the hits and all of the running have certainly worn Cam Newton down, and I don't think that he would gel very well with what Bruce Arians commands out of his quarterback position. So while you could have an interesting narrative of, hey, the Carolina Panthers stole Gerald McCoy from us, so the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to steal Cam Newton from the Panthers, I don't think it's going to happen. I think that Cam Newton is probably either going to go to the Chargers, the Bears, or stay with the Carolina Panthers. I just don't really think he's going to be a very, big option for the Buccaneers in any capacity. Next two guys, Joe Flacco and Andy Dalton. Now, these guys are very, very, very similar kinds of quarterbacks. They're both kind of field general, pocket passer types of guys. Andy Dalton's been in the playoffs multiple times. Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl with the Baltimore Ravens, and you know what? I like both of these quarterbacks. And I know people, again, are going to freak out and go, but they suck. They're mediocre. I tend to disagree a little bit. I think that they can win you a lot of games. We've seen both these guys go to playoffs before, multiple times in their careers, and they're still around a pretty decent age. They're, lower 30s, so I still think that they can contribute to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and still be starting quarterbacks in this league. I think you could have both scenarios fit both of these quarterbacks. You could have them be a starting quarterback and, an eventual bridge quarterback to whatever rookie you decide to draft if you decide to fully move on from Jameis Winston, or if you decide, hey, we're going to keep Jameis Winston, but we want a strong starting backup quarterback option there. Both those guys fit the mold absolutely perfectly. Both Joe Flacco and Andy Dalton do. So, yeah, given both circumstances, whatever happens with these guys and their contracts, I would not mind either one of these guys being on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers next season, whether Jameis Winston stays or he goes. Next, you have a handful of guys that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers could end up trading for. Now, these guys' contracts, they are not running out anytime soon, but the Buccaneers could always trade for them. You have Tyrod Taylor, Matthew Stafford, Derek Carr, Alex Smith, Nick Foles, and Josh Rosen. First things first, Matthew Stafford, he's the most unlikely out of the bunch. He's probably going to stay with the Detroit Lions and continue to be their starting quarterback. But moving on past him, you have Tyrod Taylor, who I like a lot, again, lower 30s in terms of his age, and he really got a raw deal with the Buffalo Bills. He was a pretty decent starting quarterback, but they just didn't decide to keep him long-term, which was really weird. Now he's been a backup for the Chargers, and I really think that if he had the chance to be a starting quarterback again, he could really produce. He has some very good scrambling ability, and he has some good throwing ability as well. Again, much like Andy Dalton, much like Joe Flacco, I wouldn't mind him in either scenario with or without Jameis Winston. Alex Smith, he's had a gruesome leg injury. He's also in his mid-30s. I don't really know if the Buccaneers would be interested in him. Nick Foles, he is currently making $22 million for the next 3 years with the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have basically, ruined that quarterback situation with himself and Gardner Minshew. So Nick Foles could be available for trade. I wouldn't mind, Nick Foles coming to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but that contract would probably have to be reduced a little bit. $22 million for 3 years, that's a lot of money. Probably reduce that a little bit, especially if you still have Jameis Winston on the roster. The Jaguars would probably have to eat a lot of that salary cap, but always an intriguing option with Nick Foles. He almost picked the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a few years ago in free agency, but he ultimately decided to go back to the Philadelphia Eagles, and it won him a Super Bowl. Derek Carr is a really interesting option because who knows what John Gruden is going to do at the quarterback position. Like, we really have no idea, and I personally don't think that he has been insanely impressed with Derek Carr, so we could see Derek Carr become available for trade, given, certain types of, price tags and stuff along those lines, whatever the circumstances are. Derek Carr could be traded. He is still, relatively young. I believe he is late 20s. So, yeah, the Buccaneers could certainly have him as their starting quarterback for a handful of years, and I wouldn't mind that at all. I like Derek Carr. I think he can be a good quarterback, especially in Bruce Arians' system, and, yeah, he would certainly be a very interesting option. And then finally, Josh Rosen. Josh Rosen has had such a bad deal. He went from the 1-win Arizona Cardinals. He was traded after his rookie season. He's a former first-round draft pick, by the way, and he was traded to the Miami Dolphins, where they only won 5 games this year and started Ryan Fitzpatrick over him. Now, I like Josh Rosen, and I think Josh Rosen still has a lot of potential in the NFL, and I think the Buccaneers could get a pretty good deal if they traded for him. If you gave up, say, like a 3rd or a 4th round draft pick, that could be an absolute steal. Reason for this is because, again, Josh Rosen, former first-round draft pick, he has what it takes, I believe, to be a solid starting quarterback in the NFL. He is still incredibly, incredibly young, former first-round draft pick, and that could be a low-key, steal of a move for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Bring in Josh Rosen, get one of these bridge quarterbacks, like I mentioned earlier in this video, to, really help and teach Josh Rosen and have, Josh Rosen eventually be the long-term starting quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That is certainly a series of moves that I could be in favor for. Finally, the last few guys that you have are available via the draft. You have guys like Justin Herbert, Jacob Eason, Jalen Hurts, and Jordan Love. A lot of these guys could be available in the first and second rounds, and I will talk about them more in a future video, but just to, paraphrase here, a lot of these guys are young, mobile quarterbacks with big, strong arms, and they could fit Bruce Arians' system very, very well. I don't foresee a scenario where the Buccaneers keep Jameis Winston and draft a quarterback in the first round. I think that is a foolish idea, and I don't necessarily agree with that. But if the Buccaneers were to move on from Jameis Winston, get a bridge quarterback like an Andy Dalton, a Joe Flacco, or maybe even one of the other guys I mentioned that I find intriguing, then yes, I would totally see them drafting a quarterback in the first round along the lines of Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Jacob Eason, and Jordan Love. Guys, I think that is it for all of the options that I've listed. Let me just go through the names real quick again. Ryan Griffin, Jameis Winston, Blaine Gabbert, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Ryan Tannehill. Those guys are pretty much off the table. Marcus Mariota, Case Keenum, Teddy Bridgewater, Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, Cam Newton, Andy Dalton, Joe Flacco, Tyrod Taylor, Matthew Stafford, Derek Carr, Alex Smith, Nick Foles, Josh Rosen, Justin Herbert, Jacob Eason, Jalen Hurts, and Jordan Love. Those are pretty much all of the names that you guys need to keep an eye on for the quarterback position for this upcoming offseason. Whether or not the Buccaneers do or do not keep Jameis Winston, you should keep an eye on all of those quarterbacks because one of them could be ending up coming to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for the upcoming season. So yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know what quarterback you guys would be interested in for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with or without Jameis Winston down in the comment section below. And thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope y'all enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.